things. Please keep yourself muted unless you are talking. You can mute yourself up in the top right corner of your video if you're on a PC. If you're on Apple, I think it's in the bottom, or on an iPad. Also, please open up your chat, because you will see, that's where you can ask questions. I'll be posting links in there throughout the talk. Veena will be sharing a PowerPoint this evening. And if you need anything, please just put it in the chat. And any technical difficulties that come tonight, please just roll with them. So Veena, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our grantees.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. I am Veena Khandke, Director of Grants and Partnerships at Dining for Women. Thank you, Beth Ellen, for the introduction. And I just wanted to let everybody know that we will have 3 parts to today's panel. So I'm going to begin with a presentation on the Sustainable Development Goals. This is a PowerPoint presentation that I will be walking all of you through. I have done this in several other forums. So a little tip, you don't have to read everything off the slide. I think it would be sufficient if you just hear me highlight some of the issues that would be the takeaway messages. After my presentation on the SDGs, I will introduce the panelists, and then we will have a Q&A with them. And that should bring us to about 8:15 p.m. And then we will have our members ask the panelists questions. So that's where we're going with this. We're hoping everybody's home internet is working reasonably well, and I hope mine is too. But here goes. If you are interested in the PowerPoint presentation, kind of let Sheila know that in the chat, and perhaps we can find a way to get it to you. So I'm going to start with sharing my screen. I'm guessing all of you can see it, right? Thumbs up, Beth Ellen? Okay, so here it is. The Sustainable Development Goals is kind of a world agenda, something that all the countries in the world have committed to. It is an agenda that we hope to achieve by the year 2030. Now, it is following on the heels of the Millennium Development Goals. And what we do know is that the Millennium Development Goals were very, very successful in being able to reach a few goals and achieve a few things. One is primary education was something that was achieved by most countries. A lot of you will be familiar with this little grid. You've seen it often. It is in our project fact sheets. So let's see where we are at. In the Sustainable Development Goals, where are the countries poised today? Will we make it all the goals? Will we achieve what we need to achieve by 2030? And how is COVID and the worldwide pandemic going to impact all of this? So moving on, some ideas of key ideas of the SDGs. One thing that was decided by all the government agencies that partnered in order to make this possible, and all the civil society nonprofits, much like our grantees, that contributed to developing the SDGs, what everybody decided was that for sustainable development, we do need 3 main ideas: economic growth, inclusion, and environmental protection. These are the 3 key ideas. Eradicating poverty in all of its forms is a key element to push all the countries forward. The SDGs are not legally binding. Countries have to kind of take their own pathway towards all of this. Did I lose my share screen? I'm sorry. Okay. Am I back? Okay. And all stakeholders are expected to contribute. So that is what is the beauty of this. This is not legally binding, but everybody is contributing to this. Mobilizing financial resources is a key part of the agenda. So let's look at some of the highlights of Goal 1, which is ending poverty in all its forms everywhere. A whole lot of countries have made remarkable progress in reducing poverty. Roughly, you can say about 736 million people live below the extreme poverty threshold. But all it takes is a drought, a famine, conflict in various countries to bring a whole lot of people down into the extreme poverty threshold. So in some ways, we are kind of on the precipice of something that could get worse at any time. So just imagine what COVID-19 is possibly doing in all the different countries and what these numbers are going to look at sometime in the future. The most important thing that all countries know is that in order to protect the people at the very, very bottom, we need social security benefits, whatever it is, whether it is food supplementation, healthcare, or some kind of thing to protect the people at the bottom. And only 45% of the world's population are covered by any of this. Disasters are taking a huge toll on lots of countries: hurricanes, cyclones, famines, and now even the locust invasions. The second goal was about ending hunger and achieving food security, improved nutrition, and promoting sustainable agriculture. You're going to hear more about this from Gardens for Health International and also from Health in Harmony, how they are working in their communities to achieve all of this. What is interesting with goal number 2 is that hunger has been separated from poverty, because even populations that do not live in poverty, even they have food security issues. And this could be because of their isolation, this could be because of the cost of food, this could be for a number of reasons. So how does hunger impact health? We are tracking in every country, we're tracking stunting and wasting. Lots of countries have made phenomenal progress, reducing the amount of children who are stunted or the children who are wasted. But the progress has not been as we had hoped for, and there is much that needs to be done. Agricultural subsidies in some countries are distorting the price of foods. There are ways in which countries need to work at this in order to move this along. The next goal, some of the highlights of this: maternal mortality, something that we talk about constantly at Dining for Women. We have funded a whole lot of projects that are designed to reduce maternal mortality. The ratio has declined by 37% since the year 2000. We still have 303,000 women around the world who die from pregnancy-related complications. That is still something we need to work at. With regards to under 5 mortality, there has been a huge drop, about 47%, but we still have issues to consider. These include wash-related issues that Maji Safi is going to talk to us about, how water, the quality of water is so very important in order to bring down under 5 mortality. Neonatal mortality has come down by 39%. Adolescent birth rate is 44 births per 1,000 women. So there are some progress that we have made, but the bad news is the world is not on track to end malaria by 2030. So it's a mixed bag of issues that we're facing in goal 3. Moving along, one of the things that reduce maternal mortality in lots of countries is to have the birth attended by a skilled health attendant. Dining for Women has funded so many projects where we have community health workers, we have the Boda Boda motorbike riders taking women to hospitals so that they can have a birth that is attended by a skilled attendant. This is what brings down maternal mortality in so many different places. We have made phenomenal progress, but one area on healthy lives is HIV. Sub-Saharan Africa still faces a whole lot of challenges in controlling HIV and some of the other major conditions like malaria and TB that we will also talk about towards the end of our panel discussion with our advocacy chapter leader, Leslie Heilig. Goal 4 is about ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong opportunities for all. So we may have raised the number of children who are going to school. We did it pretty well with the Millennium Development Goals with elementary school, and now we are moving that and pushing forward with secondary school in the Sustainable Development Goals. However, the quality of education still has a lot for us to work on. A lot of children around the world still don't score very high on reading and writing tests and mathematics. So teacher training is one of the key issues for that. And we need to work on that to move it along so that we are preparing the generations, the younger generations, for a more complex world. Moving along to goal 5, which is achieving gender equality and empowerment for all women and girls. Now, there are different indicators in all of these sustainable development goals. There are different things that different countries are tracking. If you look closely, women and girls are expressed and need help in almost all the 17 goals that we are looking at. Now, goal 5 is specific to achieving gender equality, and some of the issues that are being tracked. One is child marriage. Now, we do know that child marriage has decreased by over 40% in lots of countries, but mainly in Southern Asia, where it is quite a cultural practice. Now, child marriage does contribute to higher maternal mortality when young girls, teen girls, are trying to give birth when their bodies have not actually grown to adult proportions. So this is a huge achievement by a lot of countries. When we track what women do and what work women do, women are still spending 3 times more in unpaid domestic work. They still hold a lot of the responsibilities in lots of families. They also work outside the home, in jobs, in corporate boardrooms, in factories. They're also producing a whole lot of food around the world. So the issues for women in work still have a lot to be worked at. When we look at goal 6, which is ensuring the management of water, this is once again another topic that we hope Maji Safi will expand for us about the quality of water, how important it is for children. Diarrhea kills so many children at very, very young ages, and that contributes to the under 5 mortality rate. 3 in 10 people lack access to safely managed drinking water services. This is across the world. So what exactly can different countries do in order to achieve this goal? We still have wastewater that is not safely treated in large parts of the world. When we look at sanitation facilities in on the continent of Asia especially, and in parts of Africa, we still have open defecation. So how exactly can we change some of these cultural practices? Can we help different countries to build these systems which require a whole lot of financial investments that contribute to health? Moving on to goal 7, in order to ensure that we have affordable, reliable energy for all different countries, a lot has been done. When we started this entire process a decade ago, renewables did not roll off our tongue as it does now. A lot of countries have made investments in renewable energy. And since 2015, we have made remarkable progress. However, renewable energy has to be more affordable. It has to be, we have to be able to bring it to different people at a reliable cost. And the question always becomes, how do we store some of this clean energy, especially wind and solar? Progress has been made on all of that, but we still have a ways to go. Moving on to goal 8, which is trying to find sustainable economic and productive employment work for everybody. One of the most biggest challenges that is coming up in the next decade is that all countries in the world, especially developing countries, are going to experience a huge youth bulge. There will be a lot more young people in the world, and presently they are experiencing the highest amount of unemployment. So where should countries focus? They should be thinking of jobs for the future. Is that job going to be in the digital world? Is it going to be in the technical world? Is that where the infrastructure needs to be focused on? So youth unemployment is a major issue. The other thing that we have to focus on when we're talking about sustainable economies is the earning inequalities that still persist between men and women. Men still earn 12.5% more than women do in lots of countries. This is something that may take a lot more investment into creating the ladders of opportunity for women that would alter the balance more and more. So this may require more work than all of us think. Moving on to goal 9, which is to promote inclusive and sustainable innovations in manufacturing, in jobs. All of us have been talking about this for quite a while. Jobs have been leaving certain parts of the world and they are moving to different parts of the world. So trying to manage that shift that every country is experiencing has to be through cooperation between different countries. Manufacturing has been going up, especially in developing countries. Those are better paid jobs. So the GDP has been going up in several countries. High technology sectors in the world has increased, but high technology is only in certain pockets of different parts of the world. It requires a huge technology investment that not all countries have been able to afford. Maybe high tech is not the answer always to every issue and every problem that different countries face. So countries have to make their own choices. So it remains to be seen how this will all play out in the next 10 years. Broadband has reached so many different countries. It is actually quite interesting that developing countries have skipped some of the technologies that Western countries had, and they have moved on to the cell phone technology, and they're doing their banking, they are connecting to health promoters, they're connecting to community health workers through cell phones. So that has huge potentials to change the world and how we work in this world. Goal 10 is to reduce inequalities within and among different countries. As we all have been experiencing and talking about, there is migrations of populations from places where there is no work to places where there is work. Whether that migration is legal or illegal is an argument we can have for another day. The fact remains that populations have always moved to where the jobs are. And the money that they send back to their homes form an important part of those countries' GDP. So think about what COVID-19 has been doing to so many people, where they have left the countries where they work in, gone back home without any salary or jobs, and now they're all in lockdown, and everybody is waiting for economies to open across the world for the patterns to resume. But how will these patterns resume? Will it be safe? Will we have the jobs of yesteryear? That remains to be seen. Goal 11 is about making urban settlements in different parts of the world more inclusive, more sustainable, and more livable. In 2016, 4.2 million people died from air pollution. Urbanization is here to stay. In every part of the world, we are seeing that populations that live in the rural parts of the world, as their livelihood is disappearing, they are all flocking to the cities. But what is the quality of life in the cities? What are the health risks that they are experiencing now in crowded, very densely populated communities? How do natural disasters impact these urban areas? So the trend is going to continue for the next decade of people moving to urban areas. Are countries ready to handle the influx? And what would be the quality of life for people who are moving into these places? Goal 12 is to ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns in various parts of the world. This would be how we consume products. Is it single-use products or is it recyclable products? So every country has had to come up with their own plans, whether it is banning plastic, whether it is only allowing renewable packaging on products, whether it is reusing, whatever it is, they've had to come up with their own plans. Countries are building those policies. Corporations are reporting on all their sustainable policies. So there is a general sense that this needs to be tackled, and countries are tackling this. Moving on to goal 13. This is one of the biggest issues that everybody is talking about, and especially the youth of today are talking about. They do see what the challenges of climate change are. They do see the challenges of greenhouse gases and warmer temperatures in the world. We are all racing to make sure that the temperature of the world does not go too high, and we hope to sustain it at a more manageable level. It remains to be seen whether we can do this. It is good news. 185 parties have signed to the Paris Agreement. Everybody's committing to the goals. Can we make it? Moving on to goal 14, which is conserving sustainably the use of the oceans. Why are the oceans so important? The oceans have the capacity for sequestering carbon dioxide, and that helps with changes in climate change. But if our oceans get more acidic, the capacity to absorb CO2 is reduced. So what we put into our oceans impact the entire world. But more important, they also impact the marine life of all the coastal communities that are around these water sources. So what happens to our fishermen and fisherwomen? Can we live off some of the fish and marine life of the seas? Our populations are growing. We need food sources. Can we manage this in a sustainable way? Goal 15 is to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of ecosystems, managing forests, combating the degradation of the land. Health and Harmony is probably going to help us understand what it is that they are doing in the rainforests of Asia. There is much to be done, but those are large issues to be faced. Can every community pitch in and do their part so that we can protect natural resources for the next generation? The 2030 agenda has all the plans laid out. Let's see if we can achieve these sustainable development goals. Goal 16 is to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all. One of the key indicators of this goal is keeping track of human trafficking. Now, human trafficking is related to all those migrating populations. In several countries, it is a normal process to contact an agent who will offer you a job in another country and get you all the paperwork to get you to that job in the other country. This is one of the reasons so many people approach agents, but often they do not know if they are human traffickers. This is one of the reasons that this is happening all over the world, and it is so difficult to control because it is part of a normal day of business for most people, but you have human traffickers who pose as these agents, offer jobs, and you're seeing populations move from different parts of the country and not having the power to stop what is happening to them. A major part of human trafficking does include sex trafficking, and this is young, vulnerable girls who are actually looking for better opportunities in different parts of the world, and they end up caught up in this net. Justice in different countries is up to the local justice systems, but are these institutions accountable? That is something that everybody is working on. Goal 17, which is our last goal, is to strengthen the implementation and revitalize global partnerships for sustainable development. The big ideas, the big goal was for richer countries and for foundations and those of means to support the process of achieving the sustainable development goals. Those ideas were in theory. Some of it has happened where there is an effort to support the work of sustainable development goals in different countries. But in recent times, some of that aid has not really been forthcoming. Our advocacy chapter leader, Leslie Heilig, will talk about how all of us can play a role in making some of these things happen so that all countries in the world can achieve the sustainable development goals. So I'm going to stop there. That was quite a breeze through 17 different goals, but let's get to the most important thing for today, which is to introduce you to our panel presenters. When I call your name, please wave so everybody else can see who you are, and then we will get into our Q&A. So I'm going to begin with Dorothy Oching. Hi, Dorothy. Dorothy Oching is the Director of Operations for the Maji Safi Group. Originally from Kenya, Dorothy received her Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Middle Tennessee State University and a Master's in Public Health from Washington University in St. Louis. She has worked as a registered nurse in various hospital settings before she assisted Mcgee Safi Group to plan and implement their first health screening program in 2015. She went on to become their female hygiene program manager before taking on her present position, which is Director of Operations at Mcgee Safi Group. Dining for Women members will remember that Mcgee Safi Group was our featured grantee in February of 2019. So hello and welcome, Dorothy. Next, we have Meghan Mcgee. Meghan, if you could please wave so that we can all see you. Meghan is the US Operations Manager for Gardens for Health International. It is a nutrition and agriculture nonprofit in Rwanda that empowers at-risk mothers to grow and eat healthy food. Before GHI, Meghan lived in Tanzania for 3 years, working for girls' education nonprofits on a Princeton in Africa fellowship. Meghan has a bachelor's degree from Harvard in social studies with a focus on gender and education in sub-Saharan Africa. Welcome, Meghan. Dining for Women members will remember that Gardens for Health International was a featured grantee in November of 2014 and a sustained grantee 2019 to 2021. Last but not least, we have Trina. Trina Noonan, hi Trina, is Health and Harmony's Managing Director overseeing fundraising, finance, and administration. Trina holds a BA in journalism and an MS in environmental studies. And before she joined Health and Harmony in 2013, Trina worked and volunteered with a variety of environmental and social nonprofits, working on sustainable community development, climate justice, and the role of women and religion in environmental movements. How interesting. Dining for Women members will remember that Health and Harmony had the very, very popular project called Goats for Widows. This was in September of 2012. It was one of the favorite projects for all our members. And then Health and Harmony came back to us as a sustained grantee from 2016 to 2018. So Trina, Dorothy, and Meghan, if you could unmute yourself. Here's my question to you, Trina. I'm going to start with you. Health and Harmony works in island states, mainly in Asia. You're seeing rising waters in some of these island states. You work in rainforests. There are a whole range of challenges. So what is Health and Harmony's vision, and what are you trying to achieve in some of these countries?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody for joining, and thanks for having us tonight. Thanks for your presentation, Veena. I'm excited to be here and talk with Dining for Women members. And I don't know if anybody's on the call, but I know several of you went and visited our site in Indonesia. So hopefully some of you are joining us tonight. But yeah, so Health and Harmony, for those who don't know, is a 15-year-old international planetary health nonprofit. Really, we are committed to reversing deforestation to draw down the necessary carbon by 2030. So like you were talking about in your SDGs, we are very committed to climate action and see the work that we do as climate solutions, but really cross-cutting a lot of those SDGs and a lot of the social health, livelihood issues that are wrapped up in that. So what we do is we use a radical listening approach with communities to understand the drivers of degradation of rainforests and then invest in the solutions that the communities design. So often this means access to quality and affordable healthcare, plus sustainable livelihoods like raising goats and other animal husbandry. And we found that by truly recognizing that the rainforest communities are the experts on conserving those rainforests, this work has been uniquely successful. So we've seen a 90% decrease in logging households, a 67% decrease in infant mortality, 52,000 acres of regenerated rainforest at our first site. And like you say, we're working largely in Borneo right now, and we've just expanded into Madagascar as well, which I didn't think of it until you talked about how we work in island nations, but Madagascar is of course also an island nation. But yes, to talk just briefly about what our big vision is for our work for the planet. is, is really working at a systems level approach and working at from a planetary health approach, which sees the well-being of ecosystems very intimately tied to the well-being of people in a very symbiotic way. So ecosystems need healthy people, and healthy people need healthy ecosystems. So that's kind of the crux of the work that we're doing, is that intersection. And so we really envision a healthy planet with healthy people on it. And that's why we're working directly with rainforests and rainforest communities.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go to Meghan now. So Gardens for Health International is trying to create these very cultural shifts among the populations you're working in Rwanda, trying to change the way they grow food and the way they eat food, focusing on maternal health. So Meghan, can you tell us a little bit more about the vision of Gardens for Health International?
Sure. So first off, thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. We're very excited to be here. So for those of you who don't know, Gardens for Health works in Rwanda at the nexus of nutrition and agriculture. And we empower mothers to grow and eat healthy food, as Veena was saying. So why do we do this work? The majority of the world is engaged in farming, yet millions of children are malnourished. The difference is especially stark in Rwanda, where about 80% of Rwandans are engaged in agriculture, yet 35% of children under 5 are chronically malnourished. Further, 45% of all under 5 child deaths are related to malnutrition. So it's certainly a huge problem across the world and a huge problem in Rwanda. So Gardens for Health was founded on the simple concept that food alone does not equal good nutrition. Families need access to nutritious and healthy food in order to fix this problem of chronic malnutrition. So in order to tackle the root causes of malnutrition, we equip mothers with knowledge on agriculture, nutrition, and health, and we equip mothers with the resources necessary in order to set up healthy vegetable gardens at their homes with which to feed their families with the nutritious foods. So our belief is that the solution to malnutrition can be found in these families' own backyards. So we were founded upon these kind of simple concepts to the very complex problems of malnutrition. So based on that, our overall vision is to provide a long-term sustainable solution to malnutrition rather than short-term food handouts or the cyclical, a child getting sick, going to the health clinic, getting a food handout, going back home, getting sick again. We really envision providing sustainable long-term solutions. And our overall goal is that these long-term agricultural solutions are integrated into the healthcare system so that when a child is born and if a mother goes to a health clinic, whether it's for a prenatal visit or whether it's because her child is sick, that she has access to these sustainable solutions to malnutrition, and that she has access to the knowledge about agriculture, nutrition, and health, and that she also has access to the resources in order to keep her and her family healthy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Meghan. Dorothy, this is a question for you. So the words Maji Safi means clean water, and you are working in this space. Tell us more about your vision for WASH.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having us here, and hello to everyone. Like you said, Veena, Maji Safi in Swahili means clean water. We are an NGO located in Shirati, Tanzania, in the Mara region. So we're very close, basically on Lake Victoria, which is the main water source for people in our area. Maji Safi Group, we focus on educating the community through different programs on how they can use the water that they have so much access to in a clean way. The water is there, but it's not clean. So we educate what can you do, how can you collect the water and store it more properly in a clean receptacle? What is the clean receptacle that you can use to draw out the water? We educate the overall goal is so that the disease prevalence rates of water-related illnesses can be lower, because a lot of the things leading to you catching these diseases are completely preventable. We focus on using participatory methods, so working with the communities that we're working with, the villages, or working with the schools if we're going to a school or teaching at a restaurant, to find out what exactly they need, what they want, and then creating the solution together. Our vision is to be able to provide this education participatorily with everyone, and to have our participants more knowledgeable about, we have this great water source, how can we be using it more effectively? How can we keep our family safe? And how can we work more towards preventing contracting illnesses rather than treatment, because treating it is so much more complicated and is so much more expensive, and there are other variables such as time that come into it, where if we learn how to prevent contracting these diseases, it can go a long way.
Absolutely. So Dorothy, none of us can ever forget when we watched the video for Maji Safi group, when you had a huge uterus painted on the walls of one of the schools. And I remember telling you we would never have that happen in the United States, to have a uterus on a school wall. But Maji Safi did it. And so there are some unique ways in which all of you are seeking solutions. So I have a question for all three of you, but I'm going to let you, Dorothy, address this first. The natural environment is impacting all three of you in all your work, whether it is rainfall, droughts, or even the invasion of locusts right now that we are seeing in different countries. So you may have talked about this, but what are some of these big challenges that you're seeing of the natural environment in all your work? So Dorothy, go ahead.
Yes, that's a good question. For us as Maji Safi group, I would say number one is there's kind of two issues in this, is one, access to water, and then access to clean water. So like I said, we're located right on Lake Victoria. So a lot of our community has access to the water, but it's not clean. So there's a lot of education that needs to go in to make people aware that because you have this water, not necessarily is it clean, these are the different methods that you can use. Perhaps you should treat it with boiling, or with using chlorine tablets, or using ceramic filters, so that you are safe and you are healthy and your family is healthy. And then for those that are farther away from the lake, it's teaching them how can, when they do collect, say, rainwater, or if water is delivered to them, how can you still ensure that this water is clean for a long period of time?
Absolutely. Meghan, with Gardens for Health International, I mean, you're also in East Africa, so you are experiencing some of the same issues. But the videos on your website talk about organic farming and ways in which maybe you're trying to mitigate some of the issues of the natural environment. Share with us a few examples.
Sure. Since all of our program participants are farmers, they're very reliant on the earth, of course, and they're very reliant on the climate and on the different seasons, the different agricultural seasons that are in a year. And since climate change continues to impact Rwanda and to impact the world, the agricultural seasons that these farmers and these mothers are so reliant on have become increasingly hard to predict. When it's supposed to rain, there will be a long drought. When it's supposed to be the dry season, they'll have extremely heavy rains that will wash away their harvest. So we've certainly seen, since we've existed in the past 10 years, but especially in the past few years, an increasing amount of just unpredictable weather patterns. And we have had to adapt our program in order to make our organization more resilient and to make these mothers more resilient as well in their gardens. So as you're saying, we do encourage organic farming and sustainable agricultural practices that are climate resilient. So there's a number of different we meld together the local knowledge of these women and the knowledge of local farmers in Rwanda and kind of these cutting edge sustainable agricultural practices. So whether it's seed saving, so not always having to go out and buy seeds, but learning how to save the seeds from your already existing plants, or whether it's making your own plant-based fertilizers at home, or teaching women how to compost. And we are also investing more and more resources in what we call dry season farming. So there is this period of time every year where there is no rain, and this dry season is getting increasingly long and increasingly difficult. So we are investing in agricultural practices to mitigate the effects of dry season farming. So whether it's investing in agroforestry practices or permaculture, these different agricultural practices in order to alleviate some of the issues that climate change is causing us. But as always, our program participants are very dependent on the land, so it changes kind of season to season and month to month. So we've definitely had to learn how to adapt with that.
Absolutely. So Trina, the natural environment faces you all the time in all the work that you do. So give us some examples.
Yeah, so, you know, when I think about the rainforest ecosystems, I think about both the challenges of deforestation and then the challenges of reforestation, or actually regenerating the degraded, parts of the ecosystem that have already been degraded. And, you know, why we focus so much on rainforests, kind of the big picture challenge, like you were talking about, is that first off, deforestation, actually cutting down rainforests, is a huge contributor to climate change. So I believe the last time I saw the statistics, it was anywhere between 15 and 18% of the carbon dioxide emissions each year are from cutting down trees and releasing that carbon into the atmosphere. And on the flip side of that, if we're able to regenerate natural forest ecosystems, that can have a huge impact on drawing down carbon dioxide from our climate. I believe it's up to a third of the emissions that we have could be stored in ecosystems or in forests, and tropical rainforests are particularly adept at drawing down that carbon. So that's just some of both the challenge and the opportunity with working with these really critical environments. And yeah, like you say, we work specifically with these rainforest ecosystems. So obviously we see the impacts and think about the impacts of that, not just globally, but also locally with the communities that we work with. And, you know, I think I've said the words planetary health probably too many times already in this conversation, but really the definition of that is the health of people, but the health of the ecosystems on which people's health depends. So it's recognizing that you know, we need clean water, we need arable land, we need clean air in order to survive. And rainforests actually play a really big part in both water availability and climate stabilization, air quality, and kind of all of those pieces of human health. So we recognize both the hyper-local influence of rainforests on humans and human functioning, and also the global influences of those ecosystems.
Mm-hmm. So Trina, can you remind our Dining for Women members about the sustained grant that we gave, Health in Harmony, which was all about the rainforest, and it was about logging, and in the end it was about economic empowerment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, you know, what your grant specifically was for our project site, our cornerstone partner in Indonesia, that we work with a partner, ASRI, which is an Indonesian owned and run organization. And a lot of what they do is providing the programs that the communities ask for in order to be able to decrease logging. And so a lot of that is about healthcare access. So they run a clinic in Sukadana, which is the town in Indonesia that we work in. They run mobile clinics, and they run these alternative livelihood programs in everything from sustainable agriculture to animal husbandry, including the Goats for Widows program, and kids education as well on conservation and health. tuberculosis treatment, all kinds of different things. So I'm not sure if I'm getting at your question specifically, but the grant that we got from Dining for Women was really helping also some of our women-specific initiatives. And, women's empowerment is something that I think of as really a through line of what Health in Harmony does in all of our program sites and in all of the work we do. And I feel like that manifests itself in the fact that some of our livelihood programs are geared specifically towards women and towards the concerns and capacities and opportunities that women in these communities have, like working with goats, or like having kitchen gardens for themselves and their families. And then one of the other ways that we have more recently begun to truly integrate women into our programming is through our chainsaw buyback program, which is one thing that I'm always really excited to talk about. Is so we've been very successful at reducing logging in this region over the last 15 years, but for the last about 150 or so, 200 loggers in this area, it's really difficult to give up their chainsaws. And so we created an angel investing program where we give them seed funding for new businesses, new sustainable businesses. And we actually require that every family that we give these startup loans to start 2 businesses, one that the husband runs and one that the wife runs. And so this is a way that we've really been able to directly work with the women in this community to be starting their own businesses while also benefiting the rainforest ecosystem. So
Absolutely.
I'm getting too excited and going into too much detail.
No, our members love to hear the details from grantees. So moving on, I just wanted to, before moving on to the other panelists, I wanted to ask you this, Trina, because there is evidence that when human populations are encroaching into the space for the wildlife, that is where viruses are changing and moving into human populations. So in some ways, protecting the species and allowing them to survive reduces the chances of things like COVID happening, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been working actually more than ever during this crisis, and we see that this health crisis, this global pandemic, is very connected to the climate crisis that we're already working on. Like you say, the same drivers of things like climate change are also drivers of things like pandemics, encroachment into forest areas, degradation of forest areas. So, one of the many brilliant things that our executive director has said lately is that the coronavirus is yet another symptom of a sick planet. And that is really the larger issue that we're trying to address with this approach.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that focus on all this kind of work. So let me bring you back, all 3 of you, to something that is so dear to the hearts of Dining for Women members, in the role that women and girls play in moving things forward. And Dorothy, I'm going to start with you. If anybody looks at the Mcgee Safi website, you see powerful female leadership on your website. You focus on girls' empowerment. Tell us more about that.
Yes, thank you, Veena. So like you said, we focus a lot on women empowerment. The program that the Dining for Women money funded is a menstrual hygiene management program. We have a female hygiene program which focuses on educating girls and young women about menstruation, puberty, and health, so that they are most equipped with the knowledge and they're able to learn what different menstrual products are available that they can be using. The Mara region where we work is extremely rural, so there's an issue of availability and accessibility of menstrual products. So our program does the education of teaching girls and women about the changes happening in their body, but also of what is available in our area that we live in that we can use. What reusable products are available. Luckily, the funding assisted us in providing menstrual cups to our program participants. We were already providing a reusable menstrual pad, AfriPad, some of you may know it, made in Uganda. But with this funding, we were able to now give the girls options of using menstrual cups as well. And we found that that was very loved and popular for many reasons of sustainability. You only need 1 cup for 5 to 10 years, as opposed to having to purchase disposable pads every month. It's more private. A lot of girls were expressing how more comfortable they felt wearing a menstrual cup versus a pad, especially in the heat of the weather if you're wearing 1 pad. So a lot of concerns came up in that study that we did, and as we continue to improve. But that is one way that we're empowering our girls. But another way is also by employing women. We use a community health educator model in which we hire local women from the area who are well known and respected, and they're the ones that are going either to the schools or from home to home, depending on which program. We have programs that target students at schools, programs that target large gatherings of people at markets, at stores, at restaurants. So these community health educators, who are predominantly women, are the one who have been empowered to be able to carry on this education. It also increases the level of women's self-esteem on how they're seen in the community, because predominantly women in our area do more domestic labor types of jobs. So these are women that are able to show others that I can also do something more than what typically is expected of me. And they're also able to empower others to seek these opportunities. So we're trying to empower women from from both ends of them becoming teachers as our community health educators, but also of empowering young girls and women when they're menstruating to be able to tackle it in an easier way. Menstruation in Tanzania and in a lot of developing countries is a taboo topic that is not often spoken of, and accessibility, like I said, to safe and hygienic and affordable menstrual products is an issue, especially in rural areas. So we're glad that we're able to kind of bridge that gap of bringing in different products, promoting different reusable, and we aim to stick on reusable because of the cost effectiveness and the sustainability to the families of our participants.
Absolutely. Anything that helps women and girls to go to school, get an education, access opportunities, whatever we do in that direction always helps, so that they have more access and opportunities to grow and fulfill their dreams. So Megan, most of the food in the world is produced by female farmers. We don't talk enough about it. We have given up that space to corporate farming. So bring us back to the role that women play in farming and producing food and how important they are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Gardens for Health was certainly founded on that exact idea that women are the people in the household who are farming and who are feeding their children and taking care of their children and ensuring their children's health and the healthy habits of the family. And certainly people don't talk about it enough at all. And I think Gardens for Health was also founded on this idea that women were already farming. It's not like we're teaching women to farm for the first time. We are just teaching women to farm in a new way that is organic, that is sustainable, and that where they're not just growing, for example, rice and beans or corn and beans, but that they're growing a diverse set of crops that's good for the land and good for their children as well. So certainly we've targeted our curriculum specifically to be for mothers, and an exciting program that Dining for Women allowed us to expand on was our maternal nutrition program. So for the first about 5 years that we existed, we were focusing on mothers who already had children who were malnourished and who were under 2. And we kept hearing the feedback that this program is amazing, but I wish I knew this before. I wish I knew this when I was pregnant. And so that's why, in response to that, we created the maternal nutrition program for moving from treatment to prevention. So before the child even has a chance to get malnourished, can we equip the mothers with knowledge about agriculture, nutrition, and health? And can we equip them with resources to start their garden vegetables or their vegetable gardens now, so that they can start using this knowledge that they have? And then incorporating into this curriculum information specific to expectant mothers or to new mothers about breastfeeding practices, about complementary feeding, what to feed your child for the first 2 years of their life, and getting at this idea of the first 1,000 days. So from conception to the age of 2, there's 1,000 days, and the first 1,000 days of a child's life are incredibly important for their entire future. And this idea that if during the first 1,000 days we can prevent malnutrition, that these children will perform better in school, that they will have higher paying jobs, that they will be less likely to get sick. There's all of these amazing, impactful things that happen when you can reach children during these first 1,000 days. And I think that mothers and equipping mothers with this knowledge is where that transformative impact lies. And we've seen that time and time again. And part of our curriculum as well, we do, in the health section, we do tackle other issues beyond nutrition, such as gender-based violence or conflict resolution, how mothers can best mitigate some of the, as I was saying, malnutrition is such a complex problem because there's so many things that go into it. So for example, how they can interact interact with their husbands to best make sure that these healthy habits that they're trying to implement in the home are long-term and are agreeable for the entire family. So really getting buy-in from the husband. And recently we've started inviting all of the husbands to a 2-day workshop where we go over a lot of the same topics that we're training the mothers in, to say, this is what your wife has been going to for the past 14 weeks. This is what she's been spending her time on. And also, so some of the farming, so the husbands also can get in on the farming as well, so that they understand, some of the things that their wives are doing on the farm, such as composting or, organic fertilizers, things like that as well.
Wonderful. Before I let you go, is there an update you have for us about COVID in your communities?
Sure, yeah. Along with the rest of the world, COVID has certainly affected Rwanda. Fortunately, Rwanda was able to, the Rwandan government reacted quite quickly and quite swiftly. So there's about 300 cases or confirmed cases in Rwanda, and there's been 0 deaths so far. So that is great to hear, but certainly our communities are being affected. One thing that's happening is that acute malnutrition, so just simple access to food, is rising. So we've certainly had to respond to that. We've been donating a lot of the produce from our farm to the vulnerable families in our catchment area, and working more closely with health clinics as well, asking them, what do you need at this time? And providing what we can in terms of technical assistance on nutrition at the health center. So during lockdown, we were doing less of that, but now that the lockdown is being lifted in Rwanda, we're working with the workers at the health clinic and the community health workers to provide nutrition education at the point of care when women are actually going through the health clinics.
Absolutely. Dorothy, I forgot to ask you about the COVID update, especially because Tanzania has a very interesting take on lockdowns.
Yeah, you mentioned that. That's very true. Tanzania has quite a different approach. There have not been any nationally mandated lockdowns. Things have been pretty much going back as normal, as if there is no pandemic happening. So that's been difficult with the type of work we do, because we do a lot of educating either in their homes, one-on-ones, or at schools, or in markets and large gatherings of people. However, we've taken some measures to keep our employees and our participants safe in this time. The biggest being, we've just kind of shifted the kind of education we're doing. We are a health education organization. So instead of going to people's homes and into markets to do this education, we've tailored it. So for instance, we have a bigger social media presence where we've been educating a lot on COVID-19. As much as the government is not providing information on the status or encouraging life to continue as normal, they have been providing a lot of education on how to keep yourself safe, on COVID-19 itself, the virus. So we've been able to promote that education through our social media pages in the last 2 months. And about 2 weeks ago, the last time it was checked, we had reached about 57 million people with our education. We're able to do that. We're also increasing the amount of radio shows that we're presenting. So going on the radio and teaching about COVID-19 so that we're able to reach a larger group of people. We're going to markets, and instead of actually going in the market and teaching a group of people sitting together, we're using our vehicle and a loudspeaker. So we're able to keep our staff safe. We still have the papers, the pamphlet with the education in Swahili, the local language that we can give to people, but we're not able to have that direct one-on-one. We're able to teach from a loudspeaker in our vehicle. Same with I've mentioned the radio shows, the pamphlets we're doing, and then focusing a lot on social media. At the same time, we're still monitoring the situation in Tanzania, and we'll be able to move more back to how things were as we see the situation improve. But there's still a lot of work that we've been able to do and continue to do, even with menstrual hygiene management. Today is Menstrual Hygiene Management Day. We were able to go to a large radio station in the region and present on menstrual hygiene challenges specific to this time of dealing with a pandemic, because menstruation does not stop just due to a pandemic. So there have been ways that we've been able to adapt, but we're also looking at the government trying to see how we can still work respectively, but keeping everyone as safe as possible.
Absolutely. I could keep talking to you three forever, keep asking you lots and lots of questions forever, but we have to wrap up because our members want to ask you questions. Before we do, my last question to the three of you. We hear a lot in the media about Africa rising. Africa is the new continent. It is where development is happening. It is where investment is happening. But that could be language that's coming more out of Wall Street, because we still see, when we look at indicators, there are several challenges. So we will go with both the African representatives first. After that, Trina can address some of those challenges for Asia. So Meghan, if you could tell us, what are you seeing in the future? Africa is rising. It's an opportunity, but what are the challenges?
Absolutely. I've seen I think Rwanda especially is an amazing example of this idea of Africa rising. Rwanda has experienced staggering economic growth in the 2000s. I think the poverty level has gone down from something like 60% to 40%. So millions of people are rising out of poverty. I think one of the challenges is that while this rising out of poverty has been available for so many people, it's not available for all. Over the past few years, while there's been this amazing rise up out of poverty, it's kind of just plateaued in the past few years. So I think the people, for example, who are the mothers who are participating in our program have not seen this amazing economic growth that, you know, their other citizens of Rwanda have. So I think there's still a long way to go to ensuring that this economic growth reaches everyone in the entire nation and that everyone has those resources. I think, especially thinking of women and girls, Rwanda is an amazing place to be a woman. For example, it has the highest percentage of women filling parliament seats, which is amazing. It's great. But so at this national level, at this policy level, it's amazing to see that women are leaders, but ensuring that this is also at the local level, ensuring that women, girls in schools or women in families are seen as these change makers, these decision makers, and these leaders. I think that's where the challenge lies. I think amazing strides have been made, but now ensuring that this is justice for everyone, it's equality for everyone. I think that's where the challenge is.
Absolutely. Dorothy, what do you see for Tanzania?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Megan has said. I think that it is challenging depending on where you are. For instance, we at Maji Safi Group, we work in a very rural, somewhat disconnected area. So we don't have access to all of the resources that someone in Dar es Salaam or in Mwanza in a city would. So location definitely affects this a lot. And then secondly, something else that Megan mentioned was depending on who you are. So for us, women and children are more disadvantaged in these when it comes to these things. So I think in moving forward, there needs to be a lot of collaboration across sectors, depending. It's difficult if you go country to country or even region to region. Tanzania is such a large and a vast country that there are certain things that work in the cities and certain things that definitely do not work in the rural areas. For instance, going back to menstruation, access to menstrual products are so much more available in the city, and then you go to the rural areas and individuals are having to find creative ways of making their own reusable menstrual products using cloth or using different types of cotton, things like that. So accessibility, tying in to collaboration is how we'll be able to also jump forward to meet the other areas that are more advanced than we are.
Absolutely. So Trina, Asia has been rising for a while, very densely populated, but also a lot of economic growth. So where do you see all this going?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, from our perspective at Health and Harmony, what we always want to think about is balancing that growth with environmental concerns and health concerns. And like Megan and Dorothy have been talking about, justice concerns as well, and making that growth equitable, which we certainly haven't done a great job of in the US, for example. So finding better examples for growth, for just growth, and for sustainable growth. I would just say, I don't have all the answers on this for Indonesia, for Asia more broadly, but in Indonesia, a lot of the conversation tends to turn on this point of a false choice between the economy and between rainforests, and so cutting down rainforests for profit. And I say false choice because a lot of people act like that is kind of the only option. Like, we must cut down these rainforests in order to have economic growth to continue to pull our country out of poverty. And I feel like Health and Harmony is an example of how that's not the case, how there can be different economies built locally, and as we continue to scale, on larger scales as well. So I don't think that's a perfect answer, but that's just some of the things we see a lot in Indonesia, especially around this conversation about rainforests and economic growth.
Mm-hmm. So before we move on to the member question section, I would like to bring on Leslie Heilig, who is the chapter of Dining for Women's Advocacy Chapter. And Leslie, if you could tell us how easy it is for passionate Dining for Women members who deeply understand these issues, how we can help to move this issue forward for our grantees and for the world. Leslie?
That's a big question. Thanks, Veena. So advocacy is kind of the other side of the work we do with Dining for Women, in that we have the stories, we have the grassroots programs and very intimate connections to things, but there's this broader issue that we can impact over this, and that's where advocacy comes in. So as one of my committee peers would say, it's not as sexy, but it's valuable work in that being persistent and being patient. We can develop relationships with our legislators to get them to act on things such as the Global Fund to fight HIV, AIDS, TB, and malaria, or to support the World Health Organization, to support Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. There's a nutrition replenishment that is supposed to happen this summer. I don't know whether it will still happen, but to get better funding worldwide so that we can assist programs like Health and Harmony. You know, with many of you probably already get funding from USAID, is my guess. A lot of programs do. I wanted to just talk briefly about the COVID impact, which has kind of changed the advocacy orientation a little bit, in that the fact is that we can go, we're at a point of losing decades of development in terms of poverty. We're looking at approximately 80 to 100 million children being unimmunized. Even in the United States, approximately 50%, give or take, are in the last few months have not gone for routine immunizations. We already had problems with lack of vaccination and anti-vaxxer movements. And so we're at tremendous risk worldwide of epidemics of diseases that we previously, almost eliminated, resurging. In terms of COVID, tuberculosis is an enormous killer. In fact, I was going to say, I think HIV and TB killed something like 1 in every 2 deaths among adult women in reproductive years. And what's happened right now is the Global Fund had fabulous instrumentation to detect multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And there's an ability to convert those machines to test for COVID-19. So we're suddenly seeing a resurgence in numbers of patients with tuberculosis who aren't being diagnosed. At the same time, because of the supply chain disruption, we're seeing people with HIV not getting their treatment. We're seeing people with TB not getting their treatment. So advocacy is working on those issues, trying to impact it more at the top.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. And can I ask all Dining for Women members to move to the gallery view where you can see everybody, and give our panelists a thank you for being here and giving us such a wonderful discussion. I believe we're moving on to Sheila and Beth Ellen now to moderate the questions for our panelists.
Yes, Sheila is going to bring up all of your questions so that you, Veena, can direct them to the appropriate speaker.
I just need, it won't let me share.
Oh, really?
You can just read it, can you? Sheila?
Yeah, sure. This one's for Trina. How are you working successfully with the government in preventing deforestation?
That's a great question. Government partnerships are really important to everything that we do, and we know that the more closely we can work with the government, the more likely we are to succeed. And as far as on protecting rainforests and on reforestation, we work really closely with the local National Park Office and the Forestry Office on finding the right locations for reforestation, they actually funnel people that they find illegally logging in the national park to our programs, rather than arresting these people for taking part in illegal logging. They connect them with us to find alternative livelihoods and take part in, for example, our chainsaw buyback program. So that's a great example of how the government really sees us as a partner as well, and we can work collaboratively on moving loggers into more sustainable livelihoods. And then, our healthcare work is directly tied to preventing deforestation, and we work quite a bit with the government on healthcare work as well. We partner very closely with government facilities. During this time of the COVID-19 pandemic, we, thanks to donors around the world who responded really quickly to our call for emergency funds, we were actually able to share PPE and other supplies with government facilities in our region who actually were completely unprepared for the for this pandemic. And so we've been able to take a real regional response to preparation and providing supplies and equipment to government facilities as well. So it's really baked into a lot of different parts of what we do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This one. How about water for hand washing? This was asked during Dorothy's response.
How about water for hand washing? So yeah, that's a major thing that we educate about through our programs. We have 10 different programs. Some are going to schools, some are going to markets, some are going to stores to evaluate the hand washing situation at either at the store or at restaurants. So what we aim to do is to educate about why is it important. You know, washing your hands is more than just washing your hands at that time. It has it impacts your life. It impacts your risk of contracting water-related illnesses, which are very prevalent in our Lake Victoria area. So we promote hand washing stations, portable hand washing stations, and these can be in the form of buckets with a tap that someone can place outside of their little restaurant or at schools. We also, when we form a school health club at our participating schools, we often gift them a certain number of buckets for hand washing and also soap and water. And really promoting and encouraging the need to continue to ensure that you have these simple supplies. And if you're not able to, if a school is not able to purchase these buckets, we also educate on simpler and more cost-effective ways such as tippy taps. So it really just can depend on the funding capacity of either the school or the targeted community on what they can afford. It can be something expensive, building your own hand washing station, similar to what we may have in the US, or as simple as a tippy tap, so long as clean water can be in and you have soap and you have the ability to wash your hands.
Great, thank you. And I think you answered quite a bit of this question as well. Are there adequate wash facilities for menstrual cup use?
So this also depends on where you are. In our program, we work in schools for our female hygiene program where we're promoting menstrual hygiene management. And that was a challenge that when we started introducing menstrual cups to our area, that was a very big question that many people asked, or how are our girls going to wash their hands? How will they be able to change their cup? And what we found to be the most successful was to educate our girls and encourage them to take their own 1 liter bottle of water just for their menstrual cup. So finding solutions like those that, yes, a school should have water available, but the reality is most schools in our areas just don't have the water at the school. So for girls to be able to use this menstrual cup that has other benefits of them being able to attend school instead of staying home just because they're menstruating, a simple way that we can empower them to continue using a menstrual cup is to tell them, take a little of water in your backpack. And they were doing that and they continue to do that. So it's challenging and we take each case by case, but that has been a general, easy, effective way that we've been able to teach people on how to ensure they have water when using their cups in a public place.
Great, thank you. That's all for the questions. The rest were just comments to all of you from the members of how much they enjoyed the panel. So I'll let you.
We have one more to all the panelists from Lindy Cater. If each of the speakers could speak to how climate change is a women's issue.
Maybe Trina, you want to start?
Sure. I'd say, climate change, I feel like it's an increasingly acknowledged fact about how climate change will disproportionately impact women in everything from what Megan has been talking about as far as women farmers to health issues, to maternal and infant mortality issues. But I think one way that I like to think about climate change being a women's issue is the capacity for leadership. One of the stories that I found most hopeful during this time of pandemic is about how much more effective countries with women in leadership have been at responding to this pandemic. And I think that that is also going to be very true of climate change. You know, I see with my colleagues at ASRI in Indonesia and in Madagascar, you know, we have a lot of women's leadership on our US-based team and on our teams around the world. And I think that that's hugely hopeful, that we are showing that women can be leaders on climate change, that not only are they most impacted, but they can also be most effective at addressing these issues. So I think that that's, you know, one huge bright spot during all of this, and one bright spot that we can take forward into refocusing on the climate crisis.
Megan, do you want to take that?
Sure. I think I would say similar things to Trina. I think climate change disproportionately affects the most vulnerable, and often women are the most vulnerable. And I was saying earlier that climate change is creating these shocks that then women have to deal with. And for example, we've heard stories when asking our program participants about how they're faring during COVID. It's often the mothers who are, for example, you know, sacrificing their dinner so that their children can eat, or it's women who are disproportionately affected by even, for example, like the droughts that are happening caused by climate change, because they're unable to farm. And I think it also affects, for example, women who do farm and then take their produce to market. It also then affects their ability to seek that economic route as well. But certainly, I think I've also have seen a ray of hope, just as Trina has. It's our field educators are also largely women, and seeing them stepping up and tackling these issues has been really inspiring, and I think brings it all full circle, and I think brings a lot of these big issues, COVID and climate change and women's issues, brings kind of all of these things together as an opportunity for leadership.
Dorothy?
Yes, I agree with a lot of what Trina and Megan have said. Women and children are in the WASH sector predominantly more affected. When you talk about climate change, for me and the Majisafi group, I would bring in access to water as the biggest or the most obvious thing connected to climate change. For rural areas that we work in, the women and the girls are typically the sole providers in terms of finding the water, which means often walking several miles to find water if they're not close to a water source. So these are hours that they're spending collecting water, not spending doing other more productive things they could be doing for their families, or even just being able to carry on a professional job. It also affects children, because a lot of times if the children are the ones assisting the mother in finding the water, so it affects their education trajectory, because they're having to spend a lot more time growing up and taking on these responsibilities that are affected by climate change. It's definitely a women and children that are more affected in the WASH sector with climate change at what we do.
I've been noticing in the chat that a lot of people are requesting some of the information that we have used in today's panel. And so the PowerPoint presentation we will make available on our website. There is also a companion document, which is a PDF, which you could all download from the SDG site. It has a lot more details, but if it is something that your chapter wants to delve into and have a discussion and maybe follow through with future chapter meetings, things, we can make that available. So Beth Ellen, do you want to wrap this up?
We'll be sending, just to update, we'll be sending everyone the PowerPoint directly, so you don't have to come to the website to look for it. But there will also be a recording of this, and that will be on our virtual meeting site. If you have trouble finding that, you can also email us at info@diningforwomen.org. and Sheila will send it out to you. I want to thank our wonderful panel presenters. That was incredible and inspiring, and I know that this presentation will be seen by many more members. I want to thank Veena for being an outstanding interviewer and for sharing the Sustainable Development Goals. And I want to thank Sheila for moral support for me doing this in Wendy's absence, and also putting our questions up. So thank you, everyone. It's 8:29. We're going to close this meeting, but I hope everyone stays well. And just a reminder, our weekly virtual meetings have ended in May. Next month, we will be going to 2 meetings a month. So please watch out for those dates, and we will also have a 3rd special meeting on refugees. So thank you so much. Have a lovely weekend and good night. I think I need like a signature good night. I have to come up with that. Good night, everyone.
Thanks so much for hosting
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Good night.
Sheila.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Just right over there. Yeah. She waved.
That was great, Veena.
Hey, well,
And,
thank you.
and Sheila, the
Don't
question
forget-
that you put up with the group,
On.
so lovely.
How did you even do that?
So fast.
Automatic.
Exactly. I can barely read chat while I'm talking.
Well, you're talking. That's a little different.
It's different when you're
Yeah.
talking. Exactly. But thank you so much.
Wonderful. That's great.
Good night, ladies.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.